are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and guess what? My next guest has been a force in media and wellness for over 2 decades. She's a beauty editor, entrepreneur, author, television host, and now the host of The Shift. It's a groundbreaking new digital show on BET.com that's given everyday women access to the kind of boardroom wisdom that usually only a select few get to hear. Tai Beauchamp,
Oh,
welcome to
my
A More
goodness.
Perfect
Who studied
Union.
French? That's what I want to know. Who studied French over there?
I study Latin, right? And,
Okay.
and I got some friends that study French, and so hence how I got it right. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so wonderful to have you here. Let's first talk about The Shift.
Yeah.
You've curated this custom sort of board of mentors for each mentee, bringing together guidance and accountability and expertise, the kind of stuff that folks need to break through personal barriers and professional barriers. I just want to give a quick shout out to some of your very distinguished board of advisors, people like Egypt Sherrod, Bevy Smith, Brandy Harvey, Yaya DaCosta, and Judy Depart. What an incredible board of advisors. What made you choose them?
Oh, well, thank you. They're great. They're women of wisdom and, season. I think it's really important that we start to bridge a gap between the generations. And they're my peers, the women of a certain age that have had experiences in life. They have incredible businesses that they've built from the ground up. They have wisdom that has been proven. It's not just lived experience, it's proven. And they're women that want to pour. What I know about us, especially as Black women, is that when we rise and when we climb, we don't want to climb alone. We want to do it together. So the heart and the spirit of those women really reflect the truth of, why I created the shift, why it sat in my head for as long as it did, but also why it felt like it was important to bring it to life today. And then also on a personal front, they're all personal friends. Judy was the only person, Jessica was the only person that was new to me in relationship, but I obviously was a huge fan of what she built as an entrepreneur in Kaleidoscope.
So I've got to ask you just, as a follow-up, what do you think is so different about how women build versus how brothers build?
Ooh.
What have been some of your observations over the years? I mean, you have enough, data points to have an opinion about this.
Yeah, I do. Well, I was, I can only speak from my personal experience there. And then I can also extol a little bit on what I view and what I see. One, my personal experience, I went to an all-girls high school. I'm a graduate of Spelman College, and then I worked in women's magazines. I was raised by my grandmother and my mother. So being around women is just like a standard practice for me, and knowing and wanting to celebrate other women is just how I've always lived. I know you were probably talking about the Spelman 7 today and how 7 beautiful young Black women graduated, all of valedictorians of Spelman. It's the way that I know how to be in community with us. And supporting us. And then, I think to answer your question about what we see more globally, and I think it's shifting now because no one really wants to be at the top alone. We know that leads nowhere fast, ultimately. But I think with women, what we're able to do is offer from a leadership standpoint what is innate to the feminine makeup. We are compassionate. We are thoughtful. We want to actually hear and listen and connect from a heart-centered place and not just from an intellectual standpoint. So I think that a lot of those values speak to, why and how women are a lot more collaborative, usually. And I say usually, I certainly won't, create the broad stroke with everyone that everyone wants to be that way. But I think by and large, especially for those of us who have had some experience of quote unquote success and achievement, we want to bring others along with us.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I hear your caveat. This ain't all women, and just like it's not all men, right? But
This
it's
is true.
just some observations you've had over the years. Talk to our leaders, learners, and listeners about what this show, The Shift, what it is, and why you created it right now at this moment. What moment were you trying to meet in creating The Shift?
I think a new cultural moment. I think when, as someone who's been a part of, creating, institutionalizing, and driving culture for as long as you shared, even though I'm only 25, I, came out of kindergarten doing all that work. But because, at this time, when we think about a lot of the images and the portrayal of Black women that we see in media, and not saying that those aren't truths, that those aren't stories that don't matter. I definitely believe in and understand that all stories have value. But when you think about the fact that more than 360 plus thousand of us have lost jobs in the last year and a half, right? When you think about the fact that at the same token, we're the most educated demographic that is growing in scholar and leadership from a standpoint of education. When you're thinking about the fact that we're starting businesses at a greater rate than any other demographic, if those all are the case, and yet less than 1% of us receive funding. We talk about support on social media in the form of a like or an emoji, but that's not an actionable thing that can translate into actually seeing someone meet and rise to meet their goals and their dreams. So I felt like that was really important, because we're in a moment in time right now that when we know about the setbacks that we're experiencing as a people, as Black people across the board, but also knowing that should Black women experience the setback even more, that our community will experience that even more harshly, right? So like we have to uplift Black women in order to actually continue to see progress. So that was important for me. And then the other thing is, as a woman of great experience who, can be in certain environments with the best of them, that can wear the flyest fits with the most of them, and keep up and do all those things, that has its place. But the truth of it is, I think that the purpose, the passion have to fuse in order for us to meet our promise. And, that's the spirit in which the shift was created. And I'm grateful to BET for providing us with that platform, because, we need all of these stories to live in a hub, so that way people can come and find their voice, find their truth, and then find the support that they need to get to where they want to go.
Well, first thing, I want to compliment you on that fly hat, right?
Thank you. A sister friend designed it.
love that. But I want to double click on something you just said, because I think it's so important. We talk about how, when, white folks, get a cold, the Black community gets pneumonia. I would add to that, when, Black women get pneumonia, the rest of us end up on life support. I mean, we are in the ICU when Black women who have historically played just such a central role in political organizing and in expanding the Black economy in so many different ways. And so I want to double click on what you were saying around, Black women entrepreneurs. They need more than just likes and views on social media. And I think sometimes, particularly in this moment, you talk about shifting the culture, we look at people's, digital footprint, we look at their social media following. That doesn't necessarily track in terms of people that are buying their products, people that are taking advantage of their services, right? Can you speak to that point? I just want to say a little louder for people in the back.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important. We live now in a culture where the idea of visibility, and I think a lot of the likes and the emojis and the participation is a part of, the problem, right? Because we mistake the participation actually for the promotion. And how you actually really promote and elevate someone is not just to participate, it's activity, it's purchasing. A dear friend of mine today, who happens to be the founder of American Black Film Festival, Jeff Friday, said that, he said that he's tired of comp culture. Like, everyone wants comp to get into the event. That's not supporting. We have to recognize that the way that these businesses stay around, and I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years this year. Thank you, God. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know how, but for the grace of God. But this idea of support means actually putting your dollar where your mouth is. And we know, and I know you know better than anyone, the length of the dollar staying in the Jewish community compared to that of the Black community. I think we're up to 18 or 19 hours, and the Jewish community is 72 hours, 72 days. I'm sorry. So when we think about the length, or it's something, it's a huge disparity, and so I think that we have to really reconfigure how we think about what support actually looks like. And support is tangible. Support is active. It is not something that is passive that you can leave over there. So if you can't purchase something and use it day after day after day, you're not supporting. You're celebrating. Very different.
And there's a lot of celebration that is afoot out there. Now, some people also might be celebrating the fact that your show is free on YouTube.
It is.
And that's a deliberate choice. Talk to me about access, and who did you make the shift for?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So access is really important to me. And I'll be honest, even from a business standpoint, it's been sometimes to my detriment, because I want to create everything to be accessible. I come from a family of educators from Newark, New Jersey. And so when I think about access and the power of education and being able to, to tap into the tools that you need to inform yourself and to grow and build, it's just standards. It's a part of my DNA. But the reason why it was so important for me is because I want everyone to be able to tap into it. The people, who are thinking that it's not for me. I think about those people who say that there isn't an option for them. I want them to have access to that. But it's for, especially the little Black young girls that I think about in Newark. The freshmen and sophomores at Spelman, the recent college graduates from FAMU and Howard and Hampton. It's for them. But the truth of the matter is that anyone can watch this. No matter where you are in your journey, if you're looking to try and figure out how to build confidence because you're in a season of shifting in your own life, maybe you left a relationship, maybe you left a job, maybe you're trying to figure out what that next turn is going to be. We teach you about how to build that confidence, how to develop your own elevator pitch in a very specific POV. We teach, and we bring in lessons and examples that when you're watching the show, you can honor them for yourselves, right? So it's a tangible tool that as you're witnessing, and everyone that has seen it from, the more seasoned women, they said that I watched it and I really got something from it.
Wow. Well, look, I want to encourage people, run, don't walk. To your YouTube, go to bet.com to check out this show, The Shift. The show is, again, it's free on YouTube, and it's gonna bless you because they go real deep. When we come forward, we're going to continue our conversation with the host of The Shift, Tai Beauchamp. Every woman has a moment where something has to shift. Every human has a moment where something has to shift, but that could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be a mindset. When we come forward, Tai, I want you to share, what was your shift moment? What had to shift in order for you to be able to show up on this show, The Shift, helping us all to do the same? You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Tai Beauchamp when we come forward. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm really enjoying this conversation with Tai Beauchamp. She is a creator, executive producer, and host of The Shift on bet.com. If you haven't seen it, just go to YouTube. Go to YouTube to check it out. And you get to see her in action, along with a tremendous board of advisors, including some of our favorites, including Bevy Smith. We love Bevy Smith. But right before the break, Tai, I was asking about your shift. It's not lost on me, and likely not lost on anybody watching the show, that you couldn't show up the way that you do, nor could your board of advisors, if you all hadn't experienced a shift of your own. And so talk to us about your shift moment.
Let me just tell you, where do I start there? Where do I start there? What I will say is I'm always shifting. I'm always shifting. I think that for a lot of us, we think about the shifts or the pivots that we have to take professionally. Oftentimes, because those are so they're so defining for us from an identity standpoint with what we share with the world. But the truth is I'm always shifting. I've had to shift from, one type of role in life to another type of role. I was a caregiver at one point, to my grandmother. I was as an entrepreneur and as a business leader working in beauty and then wellness. We're constantly shifting. I think what is important for anyone that is shifting is to recognize that you don't have to do it alone, to understand that there are best practices, but everyone's best practice might not be your best practice. So you got to be strategic and smart about who you take counsel from and who you seek counsel with. And that's why I was really thoughtful about the people. So, when we brought in these board of advisors, Bevy Smith is all about confidence. Yaya DaCosta is someone who not only models, but, models living and living well and holistically. So I wanted those people to be the individuals to help guide a young woman who is, struggling with her confidence, who is not comfortable in settings and environments where she has to engage. So, the important thing about shifting is to recognize that we're always going to shift. It's inevitable, right? As long as you're breathing and living and you want to evolve and hopefully expand and go higher, there are going to be new levels to climb. But you shouldn't do it alone. And that was the point of the shift.
And I think that's a very important part I just want to sort of lift up, is that there's got to be an openness to the shift. Right.
Yeah.
Because if you're not shifting, you're jogging in place. Right.
Yeah.
And so, what's your advice to folks out there that are feeling jittery about this economy, that maybe, have this idea for a business, or maybe, their side hustle, they want to make it, their main thing and not the side thing anymore? What's your advice to folks who are jogging in place or sitting on the fence, playing themselves small in this moment?
Well, one thing I do realize is that there's nothing wrong with sitting still if it's purposeful stillness and it's intentional stillness. I think that, sometimes, we equate stillness with a time of not being proactive and productive, right? You can be still and do the work. Right? You can be quiet and still kind of do the research and understand where you want to go. In terms of, this economy, we're all feeling it, which is why I say that, I tell, all younger people or people that want to become entrepreneurs or self-employed, because there's a difference in being an entrepreneur and being self-employed or creating a job for yourself. Those are very different things. As a person who became an entrepreneur 20 years ago, where there was really no blueprint and there were no conversations about women entrepreneurs, nevertheless, Black women entrepreneurs, I always say, if you have security and some level of financial security, we have to sometimes then wrestle with the truth of how that might impact our mindset, our mental health, and our wellness, while being in a place that we don't want to be, but it's providing, right? So I say be strategic about those things. Don't leave your day job to go out here and try and figure out how you're going to make ends meet. That's just not wise. That's not smart. Build while you're in a position to actually create some level of financial security for yourself and invest strategically in how you build your business. In terms of the economy, I do think that it's really important, that we all think about multiple streams of income. I'm sure you've talked about this on your show before, but we're living in a cycle right now where they're saying that the future of the economy is a gig economy. People won't have full-time jobs. People will, do this and that and do this and do that. And that's okay. But what I know for sure, and as someone who was raised by her grandmother, is that you got to do something well. You got to know how to come into something or several things and actually be a master at it. So I think that sometimes, especially for young people right now that are reaching for all of the things and oftentimes just fame, we miss the opportunity to really cultivate and develop a real skill, a real know-how, leveraging your gifts, something that God has given you that actually the world needs, that no one else can do like you. Cultivate that. That might not necessarily be being in front. That might actually be serving behind. And so I think, there are a lot of messages and a lot of considerations as we think about what the economy is becoming for a lot of us.
And I want to give you a chance to just sort of clarify for our leaders, learners, and listeners. In the world according to Tai Beauchamp, what is that difference between being an entrepreneur and being self-employed? Because I hear a lot of people sort of use it interchangeably. I don't necessarily see it that way, but you're the expert. What's the difference?
Entrepreneurs, like myself, have had multiple businesses. We're operating with P&Ls. You're actually trying to scale a business. And the business ideally will not need you for every single thing, because if that's the case, you're creating a job that you'll always have to be tied to and tethered to. And I speak from experience with that, right? With my work as a host, if I didn't show up to host, I wasn't getting paid. Those were jobs, right? When you create an ecosystem of either building and creating and producing other people with other talents, other gifts that can be scaled, that's a very different thing. Oftentimes we're self-employed, and it's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's important that we understand the difference, so that way we can choose with informed wisdom and understanding about how we do that. Because I'll be perfectly honest, having a job and having to perform the same job over and over again, you might have to do that for 30 years versus a business or an enterprise that you can scale, where it will have assets, where it will appreciate, where there are potential equity and investors that you can get into the business, so that way it can be acquired, which is not necessarily as easy in this market landscape. But those are the things that create real points of difference in terms of being, self-employed, a contractor, or an entrepreneur.
Tai, you've also talked about wellness, not just as self-care, but as a form of resistance. Can you explain to us? Because I think a lot of people hear wellness and they think about face mask and candles and yoga and green juice. What say you about wellness?
I say a lot about wellness. It's a form of resistance for me, because I think about the way that I'm able to approach my wellness, my total wellness. And, there are 8 dimensions of wellness. It's not just the physical thing. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's environmental, it's intellectual, it's social. They're all financial. All of these things speak to a total wellness kind of equation. But I think about my wellness being a form of resistance for me, because I think about my grandmother, who didn't have the opportunity to access all of these points with clarity and with intention. She practiced yoga sometimes. She went for walks sometimes. She prayed sometimes, but she wasn't thoughtful about actually this being a part of how she nurtures herself back to wholeness in order to show up. And that is the resistance, right? Because it's almost like you're equipping yourself with what the tools that you need to go out into this world. And so if we're thoughtful about that, that's where the act of resistance comes in, because you know that you're doing it for a greater good. But the green juice, yeah, it's a piece of it. I definitely encourage us, to ensure that we're not, becoming the statistics of some of our families, with diabetes and what have you, and eating more healthily. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of times in our communities, access, we talked about that earlier, access to what is healthier, what is less contaminated with pesticides that we know are everywhere, right? That is truly organic. Those things are not, those can be luxuries for a lot of people, which is why I say do the best that you can with what you know. Equip yourself. If you're not going to necessarily be as physically healthy for whatever reason, if you can't go to the gym, I just had knee replacement, I can't work out right now, I'm looking crazy right now, to be quite honest. Certainly not the way that I'm used and accustomed to, but my spiritual practice, I'm doubling down on that. My intellectual practice, I'm doubling down on that. I'm learning about AI. I'm trying to understand what's happening there. My social practice, I have my friends coming over. So where there are pieces of the wellness equation that you can't tap into, as readily, or nurture as readily or as easily, I'm ensuring that those other elements of my wellness equation are being met.
I love that you invoked your grandmother, and you don't hear many people talk about their grandmother as being early demonstrations for them about wellness, particularly when it came to not just prayer, but yoga and all the things, all the things. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about my maternal grandmother in
Mm.
light of what's been happening related to voting rights.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on me, as my mom has reminded me, that my grandparents were in their 40s when they voted for the first time, when they had
Oh,
the right
wow.
to vote for the first time. As somebody in their 40s, that hits different. That hits different for
Yeah.
me, right? And I know, like, when we're talking to people and saying, hey, exercise your vote at the ballot, exercise your voice at the ballot with your vote. And when we invoke this history, I think for so long we've sort of taken it for granted. But it's true that there's so much that our parents and grandparents have exposed us to that are available to us to keep us rooted. No.
Oh, 1,000%. What you just shared is a part of the reason why the shift is so important to me, and I think to the community. Like I said, it's this intergenerational connection, because we can't go where we desire to go without being clear and conscious about where we are and where we have been, because we're seeing history repeat itself again and again, right? But never in history at such a time as this have we had as many Black educated women, as many entrepreneurial Black young folk out here saying that they want to be entrepreneurs or they're self-starters, right? We've never had that unmasked in the way that we did. And so if we realize and reflect back on what our grandparents perhaps wanted to but didn't have access to, that should be the acceleration and the energy that we need to actually plow forward. And you're right, it's never lost on me. These intergenerational moments, as someone in her 40s as well, we're becoming the elders. I hate to tell you, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the truth. We're becoming the elders. I celebrated my 25th graduation, my reunion from Spelman last year. And in the sea of my classmates at Spelman, we had this realization. And if we're becoming the elders now, what do we need to do differently in order to ensure the future for the next generation and the generations to come?
That's right. I saw my 20th anniversary email come through from USC, and I said, 20 years? Is it 20 years already? Y'all rounding up?
You're like, please don't help me with those numbers. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
My goodness, my goodness. In our remaining minute with you, Tai, I've got to ask you to speak directly to our leaders, learners, and listeners, particularly the women out there,
Yeah.
that the show that right now may feel stuck, uh,
Mm.
who feel like the shift maybe isn't possible for them. What do you say to them?
As I said earlier, we're all shifting. I honor your shift, which is why this show was created. And it's my endeavor to help us all shift together. The other thing I'll just say, before I go, thinking about our ancestors and thinking about, the generations before us. The other thing is that we're village people. I've been having this conversation a lot, and it's really important for us to recognize the truth of the essence of who we are. We're not meant to do it alone. Part of the challenge that we often experience in our lives when we're shifting is that we feel, emboldened in some way, or we believe the narrative that I actually was taught by my mother and grandmother because it was their truth, that you have to do it alone. I think everything is better when done in meaningful connection with loving community. And that's what the shift is for. You can do it, sister. I've done it. There have been many people before me and next to me that have done it as well. And we want to help you shift.
And speaking of meaningful connection, that's exactly what this conversation has been. Our thanks to Tai Beauchamp. You all should know that The Shift is streaming now on BET.com and on YouTube for free. Go find it, go share it, watch it with someone who needs it. Tai, I can't thank you enough, and please come back again soon.
I want to see you. We're going to hang out. Thank you so much, Dr. Nii-Quartelai. I appreciate it. I understand you're here in LA and we have some mutual friends and we have a love of hats. So, I'm already feeling the vibes.
We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, AI is taking over the LA mayor's race. I'll explain.